Hello, I'm Shane Schulz, and you're listening to the WEGO Health Podcast. WEGO Health is a network of over 100,000 patient advocates, influencers, and experts helping others and transforming healthcare. The following interview is from the WEGO Health Awards Winner Series. Hey, Kristen, it's great to have you here today.
Hey, Shane. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Hey, it is my pleasure. We're going to be listening to a great interview that I did with a good friend of mine. His name is Bob DeMarco. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about him?
Great. Bob DeMarco is our winner for Best in Show blog this year for our WEGO Health Awards. And, he is the founder of the Alzheimer's Reading Room. And really, the goal of his blog is to educate and empower those in the Alzheimer's community. He specifically uses his experience as his mother's caregiver who had Alzheimer's. And he uses his own experience to really help others that are in a similar boat. And he's had more than 6 million unique visitors. He's won numerous awards. He's got an incredible blog. I know at one point he was posting like 3 blogs a day. So he has great content and is such a key leader within the Alzheimer's community.
Awesome. So why don't we go ahead and listen to the interview? I am here with someone who is no stranger to the WEGO Health Awards. His name is Bob DeMarco of the Alzheimer's Reading Room. How are you, Bob?
I'm great. How about you, Shane?
I am doing really well, thank you. The Alzheimer's Reading Room, what is that all about?
Obviously, the site is dedicated to Alzheimer's and related dementias with a primary focus on caregivers. I started publishing in July of 2009, and basically we've published every day since then. Our goal is to help caregivers live a better life, and the vision of the Alzheimer's Reading Room is to help members of the Alzheimer's and related dementia community to better understand, cope, and communicate with a person living with dementia, and the Alzheimer's Reading Room basically operates for the benefit of society.
Well, I can understand that because I got to tell you, this subject, it really hits near and dear to my heart because my grandmother had Alzheimer's. So it's something that I can totally understand what it is that you're doing for people, and it really sounds very cool. So I noticed that you are also doing a lot of writing in regards to Alzheimer's World. What's the difference between Alzheimer's World and Alzheimer's Reading Room?
Well, Alzheimer's World was a concept I came up with after caring for my mother for about 18 months. And here was a simple problem. I knew my mother my whole life, and I was trying to communicate with her in the way I always had. So I would try to reason with her or explain to her, and it just wasn't working. She was unhappy and frequently ending up in her bedroom, curled up in a ball in bed. It seemed like the harder I tried, the worse we did. So I was sitting one night at 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember it. It was May 7th, 2005. And I realized that something had to change, and that something was me. So what I decided to do subsequently was to invent a whole new place. And originally I called it Dottie's World, and then I changed the name of it to Alzheimer's World. So the difference was I didn't think I could make this communication change with my mother by trying to constantly remind myself that she had Alzheimer's. So what I would do is when things started to happen, I would take a great big step to the left, and in my brain I would say Alzheimer's World. And almost immediately, instead of trying to bring my mother back to reality or deal with her in what is the old reality, which I started to call real world, I decided instead to enter her reality. And as an immediate product of that, and a good example, every day around 12:30, my mother would open the freezer, start unwrapping stuff, throw it back in. Sometimes she wrapped it back up and she didn't. And this was driving me crazy because we have one of those refrigerator freezers that beeps when the doors jar or if you leave it open too long. So imagine, beep, beep, beep. So the thing has now beeped 27 times, and I found that disconcerting. I took my step to the left. When Mother started doing it, we have 2 entrances to our kitchen. I went to the far entrance. I leaned up against the wall and just started to watch her. In other words, enter her reality. What was she doing? Why was she doing it? And immediately I went from complete and total stress to a feeling of calmness because I was in this new place and I was starting to really understand where my mom was, and that was Alzheimer's World. So part of the invention was to try to both decrease my stress as a caregiver and to decrease the stress and confusion that I was bringing on to my mother. So that was the very beginning. And over time, I learned in terms of the Alzheimer's World reality that it was counterproductive to try to correct my mother. For example, she would say, and this was for 8 years, I'm hungry, I'm starving, even after she just ate. And before Alzheimer's world, I would correct her and say, you can't be hungry, you just ate. She would get all confused and upset, and I would get a stomach ache because of the way she would act and the way I felt. So the difference is very simple. I started to accept her reality. So instead of correcting her, I would say something simple like, okay, Mom, give me 10 minutes. I'm working on something, and then we'll eat. And it was like fine with her. She was totally happy with that response. And of course, I didn't have to feed her in 10 minutes because she never said after 10 minutes, I thought we were going to eat or something like that. We just moved into day. So that was the very beginning of Alzheimer's. I want to add something here real quick. I've had thousands of people that have read the Alzheimer's Reading Room and read these articles that have taken a step to the left and entered what I call now the world, the shortcut for it. Right. And they email me constantly and saying the difference in how they feel, how they treat, how they cope, how they communicate is dramatic. So the problem here was I knew my mom and I had a whole lifelong way of communicating with her that was effective. It did not work after the onset of Alzheimer's. So I went to a new place, and little by little, I started to develop new communication skills, new ways of dealing with her, but all centered around one thing. I started to accept her reality instead of trying to bring her back to my reality.
You know, that makes total sense to me, because when I talk to people who are going through a lot of different challenges and struggles out there, our instinct, right, seems to be like water on a grease fire. It just seems to make things worse. And like you were saying, you're trying to bring your mom back to reality. And while doing that, she seemed to probably resent it and react in a way to where you were wrong, and therefore your relationship would then suffer because of it. And what you decided to do was, like you said, you took a step to the left and said, okay, this is Alzheimer's world or Alzheimer's world. Then you went and you said, okay, I'm in your world now, Mom. What do you want to do?
Exactly. You know, I just started to pay attention more to how she acted, the look on her face. Another situation I had that I didn't mention earlier, you know, my mother was often mean to me. She would say things like, get out, I don't need you here, I can take care of myself, which clearly wasn't true. I was taking care of her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that hurt me. That made me feel bad when she would say that to me, in spite of the fact that I could sit down and say to myself, my mom didn't mean what she said. It was more or less the Alzheimer's speaking. But when I went into Alzheimer's world, it didn't make me feel all bent out of shape like I had been or give me a stomach ache. I'm Italian. Some people call it agita. That's not what was happening. I was gaining understanding. And just to put an add-on here that's really interesting, as part of this process in Alzheimer's world, when my mom would say, get out, I don't need you, I can take care of myself, instead of explaining to her like I did in the real world, you can't live without me, you'd have to go into an assisted living, blah, 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 blah. I would go over and I would put my arm around her shoulder and put my head on her head and say something like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to take care of you. It's you and me now. And miraculously, and this didn't take that long, she stopped saying it and never said it again.
Really? So she changed her whole pattern because you changed yours?
Yes. And you just said one of the biggest words in Alzheimer's care, pattern. You have to change the dynamic. And when you have a bad pattern, and here was the pattern, my mom was being mean. By me being kind, by meeting meanness with kindness, it changed the entire situation. And from that, I started to learn that my mother had all these crazy patterns. For example, 9:37 p.m., plus or minus 2 minutes, she would get up and say she had to clean. Now, she hadn't said a word about cleaning all day long, and she would become kind of furtive about it. So in the world, I would try to explain to her, Mom, it's 9:37 at night, blah, 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 blah. I solved that problem, believe it or not, by anticipating that she was going to do that at 9:37 p.m. and taking her up into the kitchen. Well, actually, I would take her to go to the bathroom and then put her pajamas on, then take her into the kitchen with her robe on. And I gave her ice cream, and miraculously, she stopped doing it. And I actually tested this after a couple of months. One night, I decided not to give her ice cream. So anyway, she falls asleep and wakes up at like 10 o'clock. She's asleep on the sofa. And I couldn't believe it. She said to me, did I have my ice cream tonight? This is an Alzheimer's patient.
Wow.
You used a big word. You can help them remember, not really remember, but in a sense, if you're doing the same thing over and over every day, so she was getting her ice cream around 9:30 at night, we changed a bad pattern into a good pattern, and all I needed was some ice cream. Just amazing.
Wow. That really is cool. With my grandmother, like I said, she had Alzheimer's, and there was a lot of different things that were kind of cool about her. Even with the Alzheimer's, she was kind of cool because she had her own little patterns and they were kind of quirky and kind of fun and everything. But then it was almost as if almost like she took the wrong door. You remember the old game show, what's behind door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. And she would normally pick what's behind door number 1, but for whatever reason, now she's picking behind door number 3. I kind of liken it to the computer, where these days everybody's got a computer, whether it be a PC or a laptop or even your phone. And if you want to get somewhere or take a picture from somewhere, there's a folder. It seemed as if with Alzheimer's, she knew the pattern, but she was choosing the wrong folder. That's where things were getting a little bit mixed up and made it really clear that something wasn't altogether right. But there was also a whole lot that was still right within her. Is that the same thing that was with Dottie?
Yeah, and again, I think you're hitting on something that is frustrating when you're a caregiver, especially in the beginning, but can become fascinating. And believe it or not, I actually wrote an article where I suggested that the caregivers walk backwards. Walk out of your home. I don't want you to look over your shoulder. I want you to walk backwards, go out the door, and try to get out to your car or something like that, and let me know how you do. And the point I was trying to make was, it's not unusual for Alzheimer's patients to start doing exactly the opposite or something bizarre, like you're saying. Why would they pick door number 2 when they were picking door number 1 all their life? So I was encouraging the caregivers to try to walk backwards, because that is kind of what is going on in a sense. Things are upside down and backwards. And in the beginning, when you first experience this, it seems bizarre. So for example, I had a very good relationship with my mother. Excellent. And part of that was I had good parents. And the other part was when my dad was sick, me and my mother took care of him. And during that period of time, we became very good friends. So I lived a life for a long time where if I said anything to my mom, hey, I'm going to go to Home Depot. Do you want to go with me? Mom, let's do this. Mom, I want to do that. The word was always yes. After the onset of Alzheimer's, the word was always no. Ma, you want to go to July 4th picnic? No. She'd been going for 25 years. Mom, do you want to go to Josephine's birthday party? No. I did finally realize how to deal with that. But you're hitting on a really big point about this. And the thing is, these behaviors, until you get to Alzheimer's world, are so difficult to deal with because they're antithetical to how you have dealt with situations over your entire life. The point I'm trying to make is, I had to create a parallel life. I just didn't think I could change my existing life. So Alzheimer's world became a parallel life. Now you take everything you know with you, but you build that world one little block at a time until you have this brand new place, if you see what I'm saying. And the kinds of things that you're mentioning, they become, and here's the key word, normal. So once you start to understand how an Alzheimer's patient might be feeling or thinking or at any point in time, the behaviors that were so disconcerting that would drive you crazy, they become normal. And once they become normal, you're no longer stressed out, feeling all this anxiety. You're just accepting this is the way it is in Alzheimer's world. But you hit on a really good point there, I think.
Well, I got to tell you, your blog is definitely helping a lot of people, because just talking to you right now really lends light to somebody who is trying to be a caregiver to somebody who has Alzheimer's is going to go through. Because if you sit there and you say, Mom, do you want to go to the restaurant? And she says no. Well, you're going to take her literally, right? You're going to take her literally and you're going to say, well, I don't know why, because you were hungry, but now you don't want to go to the restaurant. And that's going to create agita for sure over time, as to where the frustration of it all, because you're both not on the same wavelength. You're both not on the same page. When in fact, your mom was probably saying yes, but what was coming out of her mouth was no.
Maybe. It didn't seem exactly like that while I was living it, but I do know this, that no does not mean anything in Alzheimer's. I did a couple polls, and 69% on one and 72% on the other basically indicated they were having the same experience with the person either saying no or refusing to cooperate. It gets bad when the person says no. I don't care what it is. Ma, let's go do this. No. What you're going to do in real world is, or let's just take you and me. Let's say I say, Shane, let's do this. You say no. I say, come on. If you do it, you'll have a lot. I try to explain to you why it's a good thing and why you should do it. And then maybe you'll say yes. When you do that in the real world, it works just fine. When you do that in Alzheimer's world, when you start to explain, the person living with Alzheimer's becomes confused, maybe resentful, maybe they think you're trying to boss them around. They might even be thinking you're up to something bad. I mean, you never know what they're thinking other than you can look on their face. So the point is, a lot of explanation is a no, no, no in Alzheimer's care or any related type of dementia patients. You start using a lot of words, they're going to get confused. You're going to get disconcerted. They're going to get stressed out and maybe become mean. You're going to get a stomach ache. It's a vicious cycle, Shane.
Yeah, it sounds it. I know that there are still a couple things that I really remember, and I got to tell you, some of the biggest smiles that I've had in my lifetime was listening to my grandmother sing. Even with the Alzheimer's, she still would sing. And it was kind of funny because she was almost like mimicking quite a bit, but then all of a sudden you start a song and then she would finish it for you. Like one that comes off the top of my head was, Jeremiah was a bullfrog. And then all of a sudden my grandmother goes, was a good friend of mine. And next thing you know, she just keeps on going. And the funny thing is that there was really no emotion whatsoever. It was just her mouth that was moving and the voice that was coming out. But it was almost, this is something like somebody actually hit a recording and played what it is that was coming out of her mouth because it was almost automatic. Is that something that you found with music with your mom?
Yeah. First of all, let me say, I understand how you might have been feeling when you felt happy or fascinated to see her sing. So I know what that's like because the same thing happened with my mom, or at least similar. But music is critical in Alzheimer's care. And what's going on in the situation that you're describing is when the onset of Alzheimer's happens, the patient is no longer able to remember all the new information, what they did and eventually what day it is, what week it is, what season it is. They can't remember anything new, but everything that's in their brain prior to that is still there. And this explains in part why they can sing songs. And basically, they'll sing songs, that were more popular and they're very familiar with. As it turns out, they're starting to understand now that the last part of the brain that Alzheimer's attacks is the part where you store music. So lots of patients can sing, and actually music itself, there's more and more studies coming on about this, actually soothes them and brings down their emotions. So even singing's one part of it, which I always encourage. And the other part is listening to music can have a very positive effect on the brain. As you and I know, if you like music, it makes you feel good, you got memories about music, well, it still has a very positive effect on the brain of a person living with Alzheimer's.
Wow. You got a lot of information, and I got to tell you, you are up for the award for the best blogger in the WEGO Health Awards of 2016. I've looked at your blog a couple times, and I got to tell you, folks, if you or anybody that you know is dealing with somebody who is dealing with Alzheimer's in any capacity, you definitely can benefit by going to this blog. So why don't you go ahead and tell us where it is that people can find you, Bob, so that they can learn from your experiences.
All right, first, thanks for the kind words. That's very nice of you. We're at alzheimersreadingroom.com, so it's just one string of letters, no hyphens, no apostrophes, and that's where you can find us. We offer a free subscription service so you can get the new information quick, and right now we have about 31,000 subscribers, and we have very active readers on that subscriber list. If you get on, you don't have to read every article if you don't want to, or each and every article may not appeal to you, but you may just get that one or two articles here or there that help you solve a problem or help you have a better day. As I said at the beginning, the key is to try to help caregivers to better understand, cope, and communicate with people living with Alzheimer's and related dementia. I know from the feedback, we're doing a good job at that. And like I said, we've been doing it now for, 7.5 years.
There's no question about it. It is a darn looking good blog, and it has a ton of information that is out there. So anybody who's dealing with Alzheimer's can definitely benefit from it. Hey, Bob, it's been wonderful to talk to you, and I hope to talk to you again real soon.
I want to thank you, and I want to thank WEGO Health for doing a great job, and I'll look forward to talking to you down the road, Shane.
Awesome. That's Bob DeMarco, folks. To learn more and to join the WEGO Health Network, visit www.wegohealth.com. That's www.wegohealth.com.